Hello and welcome again to Motivational Monday. Our goal here is to help you start your week off strong with strong mental health. Remember, these aren't Christian issues, these aren't non-Christian issues, these are people issues, human issues. And so we're glad you're joining us from wherever you happen to be on your journey. We're back with our friend and guest, Peter Pignon, a licensed professional counselor of more than 10 years who loves Jesus and loves helping people. Welcome back to the show, Peter.
Thank you, Pastor Paul. So good to be here. I'm praying for you guys.
Thank you. It's great to have you again. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Me too.
Speaking of our conversation, our big topic for today is loneliness.
Yeah.
And really, it's how to navigate loneliness in a world of social distancing. I've been seeing more and more of my friends and others post about how much they need their friends in this season. Some have posted about how they feel drained almost by the social distancing and lack of interaction. So I was curious to get your perspective on loneliness in this season.
Yeah, you think about the worst that they do in prison or jail is like solitary confinement.
Um,
Man, so it's like that's the worst thing that we could do to a human being. And what's really interesting about loneliness for me is that it is an emotion. So being alone is a trigger,
yeah,
but you could also be in a crowd and have that be a trigger for loneliness as well. So right now, a lot of us are more triggered by this being alone. We're not hanging out with the people that we used to. So once we're able to think about it and say, okay, hold on a second, I'm feeling lonely. And what happens after we are alone or social distancing is we end up having a lot of thoughts about why we're alone.
mm,
Why hasn't this person FaceTime me? Why hasn't this person reached out or whatever it is? The way that we start to explain why we're alone is what can really hurt us a lot. So
yeah,
that's what we see. That's what we see in this time is that it might be, well, the biggest issue is either me. So if we go me and say I'm not being reached out to because I'm not valuable, I'm not
mm,
important enough, so we can turn it inward.
that's so
So
good.
that
That's
makes
so
the
true.
loneliness even more intense, right? Or I can point it towards you. Man, Pastor Paul hasn't texted me in a while. Man, he doesn't really love me. He doesn't really care. And of course, I know we cool, me and you, we're tired. You texting me, but that's where it goes either here or there. And either if I blame myself, it makes the loneliness more intense. If I blame you, it still makes the loneliness more intense. And what really messes with us is that it doesn't bring about any solutions.
Yeah,
But it's totally normal. I mean, it makes sense that so many of us were very social before. And even those of us that are introverts, like myself, I was getting more so I was getting my fill. I had my portion of social life just being at work or just going around at church or small group or whatever it was.
yeah.
So this is even it's too much introverted time for me. It's too far. It's like, whoa, I didn't even know that I could get to this point.
Absolutely. And it's that's also something I'm discovering as an introvert as well. Now, because I have to remind myself introverts can get lonely too. No one is 100% introverted. It's kind of a spectrum, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I constantly have to remind myself of that. But as you mentioned that, a thought went through my head of in this season, man, I feel sometimes like a really bad friend because I'm not necessarily the one because I'm so introverted to do the reaching out right away.
Yeah.
Um, but as I'm learning in this season, man, this is really strong. This is what it feels
Mhm.
like to have that sense of loneliness. So
Yeah.
my question you in understanding that and seeing it in that way,
Mhm.
Peter, is how do people deal with loneliness then? How do they navigate it, especially in this season? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question that we need to keep asking ourselves as we walk through this process of like, how do I deal with it? Because even the tips that we're going to talk about here in a second, they may be very different depending on the personality, depending on the person. But I know that everybody needs to start with identifying that they're feeling lonely.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. We have to identify, hey, that's what this is. I'm feeling just like we talked about with grief. Once you
Yeah.
know that it is, then you're like, oh, this is what it is. I'm feeling lonely right now. And once you can feel that, then you can validate, hey, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you had this however much socialization that was going on, and so it makes sense that if that's gone, that we would feel lonely. And once we're identifying it and now we're validating it, then we can counter those thoughts that are not healthy.
Yeah.
Like I said, if I'm turning my loneliness on myself and saying I'm lonely and no one's reaching out to me because it's me, I'm the problem or I'm not as important, then I can counter that and say, whoa, 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 no, no, no. Like, I believe in equality. I believe that every human being has value, and that means me too. So
Yeah.
you can go back, or I believe that every human being deserves love. We all have love. Now, our behavior may not always be healthy, our choices may not always be healthy, but every human being has that love, and we can counter those thoughts that are against us. And then we can say, hey, look, the other person, like, just because they're not texting me all the time, or just because they're not calling me, just because we're not video chatting,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they don't love me, doesn't mean that they don't care.
Yeah.
They what if they're feeling the same thing that I am? And that's where a lot of us are. A lot of us are experiencing more loneliness than we ever have. And that's why it's not so easy to identify. So once we're identifying it, we're validating it, we can start to counter some of those thoughts, and you will start to see a shift in the loneliness. Just right there, when you can say, okay, I'm feeling lonely, but it's not that I'm not important. It's not that I'm not valuable. It's not that I'm not lovable. It's not that they don't love me. Then you really start to build up, and you have an ability to make it through this.
Yeah. And you know, as going back to the thought of being an introvert, because that's the lens I'm
Sure.
hearing and filtering everything
Mhm.
through. Uh One of the things that I'm realizing literally as you're sharing is I don't know that I've ever identified the feeling of loneliness in myself before.
Mhm.
And like
Yeah.
I honestly don't know because I'm really heavy on the introvert side of the spectrum,
Yeah.
you know, and I get my fill of people easily and quickly. um
Sure.
I really don't know that,
Mm.
not that I can remember, I've ever had to identify it, much less validate it. You
Yeah.
know, I if I've never identified it, there's no way I could have gotten to the place of saying, man, I am lonely right now,
Mhm.
and that's what I'm feeling, and that's okay. I can do something about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to, to everyone watching right now, especially if you're an introvert,
Mhm.
what are you learning about loneliness in this season? And as you learn it, how are you navigating it? You know, have you identified yourself as lonely at all during the season? And
Mhm.
if you have, when did that happen? How did that happen? And if you haven't, why not? You know,
Yeah.
is it because you truly aren't lonely, or maybe it's a misdiagnosed thing and you are lonely, but seeing it as something else?
Sure.
Um,
Good.
Man, I feel like I just had a little epiphany, little come to Jesus moment there,
Good.
Peter.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So each week on Motivation Monday, we try to leave everyone with a tip, something,
Mhm.
in addition to everything that's shared, kind of a small thing, a small next step that they can take. What would you say is our Motivation Monday tip for today, Peter?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and just that phrase that we say of, like, reach out and touch somebody, but not literally, not right now. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
don't literally touch anybody, but take that step and reach out. I mean, how many times have I heard stories of people reaching out, and the other person that is reached out to is
yeah,
saying, "Man, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you reached out." Because what do? We think everybody's busy, or you start having these thoughts, this narrative there. So just taking that first step. And what I love about this is that the Bible uses this analogy of us as human beings being part of a body.
Yeah.
So it's like we're all supporting each other in this way. And like you're a hand, I'm a foot, whatever it is, like we're gonna keep going in mental health, we're gonna keep going back to that, of that
Yeah.
we weren't meant to be isolated. We were meant to be connected. So when you reach out, you're being a part of the body to another part of the body. And we need that.
Yeah.
If our hands get cold, we rub them together and we get some warmth from that.
Yeah.
So we have to fight through those thoughts to even do that. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to burden them, or I don't want to say anything, but just taking that step and reaching out and not stopping there. If that person doesn't respond, there's someone else. And that's why you and I are connected to the church. The
Yeah.
church is this extension. You have a church over there, I have a church over here, that we're waiting.
Yeah.
We're waiting to connect. Like if you reach out to your church, somebody's going to follow up. Like that's what we're here. We're looking at the comments. We're trying to see who is that is looking for somebody, because we need it too. It's not just
Absolutely.
us serving the people, but the people serve us. There's this mutuality to it.
Yeah.
So that's the tip. We just push through, reach out, and touch somebody, but not literally.
100%. And what you said about the church is so true. It's something that our leadership here at the church have done that has been really interesting, especially in the feedback we've gotten, is we're trying to make our way through essentially trying to call each member of the church and just to say, hey, how are you? How are you doing? And as an introvert, again, my filter is okay.
Yeah,
that's cool, that's great, but hearing the power of it and just such a small token can
yeah.
have such powerful impact. I mean, it really is great.
And for
um
us, man, you realize that we're not only trying to reach out to people who believe just like us.
yeah.
We're
Yeah.
open. We're open to reaching out to anybody, because we're all part of the same human race. Like no matter where you come from, what you believe, like we're ready and willing to connect. And
Yeah.
I think that's one thing too, is that oh, well, I'm not going to reach out to them. They think differently, or I don't even have a relationship with Jesus yet. But that's
Like
some of
that.
my best friends think differently than I do. And so
Same
that's
here.
one thing that I love about your church, and you, Pastor Paul, is that we're so open. If we really believe what we believe from the Bible, then we can love everybody.
Absolutely. And again, it's one of the things that's so beautiful that it really isn't a Christian versus non-Christian issue. Wherever you happen to be in your journey, this is something we're all navigating. And everyone can relate to needing someone to reach out to and just connecting with them. And as you're watching this, by the way, if you're watching, something that would be really cool for you to do, just as a shout out to them, is if you tag the person that you normally reach out to when you begin to feel lonely, and just say thank you, just as a way of saying, hey, you're the one that helps me through this.
Yeah, that's
They
great.
may not even know that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's it for today. Peter, thank you so much, man. This has been so powerful and so great, especially for me, and I know for the many who will be watching. And thank you all for watching Motivational Monday. I hope this has set you up to start off your week strong with strong mental health. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you found it really helpful, share with a friend. God bless you. Until next time.